They need to go do something positive that is going to contribute to their mental health, not something negative.
Taking the time to understand who you are, where you came from, why you are the way that you are, so that you can have compassion for yourself.
It's incredible how the first 6 years of our life can really affect us for the rest of our lives.
Like what I see today is that terrorist organizations like ISIS actually have similar ways of recruiting people, just like how some of these radical groups online that are breaching every single day, and you have no idea who's listening to them, and you don't know the mental status of a person that is listening to them.
And I don't think isolation is the answer. I think if you're in a dark place mentally, you do need to find a community.
You could save somebody's life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Black Side Show in episode 10.
Yeah, 10 Micah, episodes down already.
We're doing it, baby.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited, man. I'm really happy that we are doing what we're doing. And today is a very interesting topic, mental health.
Absolutely.
This issue has been going around the United States, specifically more than the rest of the world. A lot of people are talking about mental health. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are talking about the reasons why things are happening, why young kids are not as healthy mentally, physically. It looked like we have a lot of problems here in the United States when it comes to mental health and health in general. For a country like the United States, a modern country, why are we having this problem? So basically today I brought a guest that's actually has a little bit more experience than we are in this topic. So my today guest is Staff Sergeant Bethany Bowater, who's actually has a master's degree in mental health, have worked as a SERE specialist in the United States Air Force. And I brought her for a reason because I feel this topic is extremely important to people. A lot of people are afraid to send their kids to school. A lot of people are afraid of something they can't figure out a solution for. So Beth, thank you so much for coming on our podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And we are so glad to have you. And we want to go through things with you. But first of all, like, how did you end up doing what you're doing from being in the Air Force as a SERE specialist to being a mental health provider?
Sure. So I joined the military in 2011. I always wanted to just serve my country. And so I signed up for 6 years to become a SERE specialist. My father was pararescue, so he was pararescue for 22 years, and I grew up basically just like loving. I mean, those guys were like my heroes, watching them jump out of airplanes and everything. So I, of course, chose the only career field that like women could go into in the Air Force and jump out of airplanes too, which was SERE. So I think that I really became fascinated with like human behavior and people's response to stressors, especially the stressors that we were putting them through in the SERE program. So that's really when I decided that I would choose the mental health route. I just became really interested in like, what is it about certain people that make them push through when they're at their limit or not, you know? And so that's really what I kind of jumped into, or why I jumped into this career field after the military.
Hey, Bethany, for our audience that may not be familiar with military acronyms, can you explain what SERE is?
Sure. SERE is Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. And we're instructors that teach battlefield airmen or airmen who are at high risk of capture or isolation, how to survive. So how to survive in the elements, how to evade capture. And then once captured, we teach them how to resist and return with honor.
It's a very interesting background, right?
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, and I'll let you, if you have any questions.
And the Air Force is not the only people that go through SERE training. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. There's SERE in all branches, I believe.
So those schools are separate between the branches, like Air Force SERE is different than Army SERE? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. They're similar. I mean, I think we do a lot of the same things, but.
And how did you end up getting like into the mental health kind of side of things?
Sure. So there are SERE psychs or psychologists that follow the training from the beginning to the end. And they are there to make sure that our students are healthy mentally, mentally going through the training. And I think I just found myself like kind of talking to them more, like, and being more interested in like what's happening, what they're seeing, what they're observing. And and like even in my time going through the field training portions, like you could just see these students being pushed to their limits. And it's just, like I said before, it's like some students would take it and excel, and there's a determination and a drive to push through, which, I also experienced through the training, just how profoundly capable our minds are, like, to control our bodies. And so I just became really fascinated in that.
So in your experience, the students that had the most mental resilience, did they have any commonalities as far as like a common background or a common trait?
I think that, and this is hard, like, I don't want to say, I'm not an expert like by any means. I think what I observed is kind of the difference between like the victim mentality versus, versus the mentality that just like, there's nothing that's going to stand in my way, it was interesting because, like, going through the training myself, I was by no means the biggest, strongest person going through the training. I was the only female. Mm-hmm. And it just comes down to like the desire and the drive, but there's so much research on it. I mean, one of my favorites is Viktor Frankl. He's a survivor of the Holocaust, and he talks about like, having a purpose, like having a purpose in life, that's the driving factor, so some people, for me specifically, achieving this career field. I mean, it was my purpose to ultimately save someone's life. So that was my purpose. That was my driving factor to get through the hard stuff. So I think, if anything, maybe I can say that it's having that overall bigger purpose that drives you through the hard stuff. So whether the pilots, like their dream and their purpose is to do that, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the victim mentality, because we've talked about that before on this podcast.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that it's kind of a cancer in our society. Right now, it's really bad.
It's like a threat. It's like basically a threat to society. It's like almost actually, you feel like there's a threat within the U.S. or the American society about mental health. A lot of things that we see, a lot of crises, a lot of shootings, a lot of things somehow is relating to this problem. Mm-hmm. And somehow we are not able to figure out what the solutions are to this problem. So, Bethany, I want to ask you this. It says that 60% of college kids are living with mental health issues. Most schools are unprepared, and it could really cause a lot of damage down there. Do you believe in your heart that this number is this is a natural number, or do you believe that there is a mental health crisis within the United States that we are not aware of?
Good question. Well, I think we're all aware of a mental health crisis. And I think it can be contributed to a lot of different things. I think what I see a lot in like my youth that is like an overstimulation, you know, it's having all of the information, maybe, I don't know. It's so hard. It's like maybe back in the day, it just wasn't talked about as much, but it was also a much simpler life. Right.
Right.
So it's hard to know. And then, I really do think like the idea of purpose is something here too, because I don't think people really know what they're working towards these days. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we living for? Are we working to live? Are we living to work? Are we like, what's your main goal? I just feel like things have gotten so fuzzy.
Yeah. I think
if that
in
makes
some
sense.
ways we've made progress towards mental health in that there's no longer a stigma attached to admitting you have a problem. We're no longer locking people up and doing electroshock therapy and crazy stuff like that.
Right.
But we also, you know, with social media and all of these different things and you know, the de-evolution of the American family has added a whole new type of thing to the mix, right? What do you think the biggest issues or contributors to bad mental health are today?
I just think that there's probably so much to that. I mean, I think technology and overstimulation,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big factor. I think, like you said, it's like, are the mental health numbers growing because they've always been there, or are they growing because the stigma is being alleviated and now we're talking about it? I just don't know that I have the answer.
An interesting part for you brought in, you said technology and technology simulation. Do you believe like social media or our phones in general is contributing to the mental health crisis in the United States?
I think so. I mean, I think that's why I'm working towards what I am in my work. And that is kind of getting back to nature, getting back to grounding ourselves in kind of what's real and what's not this object at our fingertips. So I think for me personally, the answer to that question is yes. I think we would see a lot more benefits if our children or our youth were being challenged with hard work, you know, and playing outside and getting dirty, like, you know what I mean? Like those types of things. But
right. I think every generation has to adapt to new technology. I'm sure like the first generation with television, they probably thought that was going to make them all crazy. Right. But so we're kind of adapting to this new social media thing. But I think the dangerous part of it is the profit aspect of social media. They develop algorithms that basically confirm your bias, right? So if you are interested in dangerous thinking, let's just say white supremacist, and you start following white supremacist groups on Facebook and other social media, it's going to continue to kind of
suggest these other
bring
words,
all of these other things together. So now you're being flooded with all of this hatred.
Yeah,
and I think that's how they keep you to stay tuned.
I think personally that the social media apps are trying to change their settings to protect themselves, to make it a little bit more safe. I don't think they were prepared for this. I believe that even the social media apps were not prepared psychologically for what they're offering. Mm-hmm. And I do believe in my heart that they're not doing this out of intentionally to disturb society. I think this is something that they were not ready for.
But it does kind of put you in a bubble. So if you're focused on good, you're going to be surrounded by good things on social media.
I agree.
Whereas if you're focused on some crazy darkness like white supremacy or something like that, some type of hatred group, it's going to also surround you with those other like-minded people. Because
it's a system, it's a computer.
Right.
And I think that's why is they have to change the settings of that computer to make it safer. Perhaps I actually filled a survey on social media a couple of days ago, and they were asking me the same questions. How can we make this safer? Do you believe we are making this safer? So actually, I filled the survey for Facebook, and I gave them exactly what I feel about it. And I can see they are collecting these information so they can change their setting. And like an example, we are talking about the recent shootings. We don't know why young people are going out there, doing all these crazy shootings, going to school. I mean, something interesting too, to see that they are young, right? There's something among the last 3-4 shooters all the way down from, Newtown in Connecticut, all that. It's just young shooters. And I'm just trying to figure out what is it contributing to that behavior? What is it contributing to that behavior that's getting people to be at such a terrible status in mental health when they're really young? Is our physical health has downgraded in the United States? Is our physical health that's pretty much going down, which is causing our mental health to be worse? Or is it related to some other reason? And that's what really I am not aware of. I keep thinking about.
Yeah. Bethany, I think you alluded to that as far as talking about children getting outside more and being, maybe even doing more outdoor chores. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a huge contributor. Some of the first questions that I ask my clients when they come in is like, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? Are you getting exercise? Like, are you taking care of the very basic functions of the body? Because we know that it is very connected to mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. My son is a self-proclaimed gamer. He when he's not in school, he can spend, 12 to 16 hours a day online gaming. And sometimes I'll come home from work and ask him if he's eaten, and he hasn't eaten all day.
Yeah.
He completely forgot to eat.
Yeah.
And he'll be all grouchy. And I'm like, dude, let's go eat some food. And as soon as he eats, he's like very cheerful and he's a completely different person. So I absolutely do agree that
I think there's a whole another psychology of watching videos. Most video content makers nowadays are trying to get you to watch more content as possible. So there's a whole psychology was when you're actually flipping down through videos, there's some kind of continuancy that once you actually watch one, you're going to be watching another, third and fourth and five. So again, videos has been a great way of us learning things, of knowing what other people, there are benefits. I'm not saying that there's no benefits to this, but I feel the negative side of it is affecting our brains. That when we came, I specialize in PSYOP. I understand how social media and PSYOP can connect to one another. She specializes in mental health. Each and every one of us understands that this is affecting something. When it comes to PSYOP, when you look at some of the recent shooters, I know the FBI goes down and they do a really deep analysis into all these shooters, who they really are, things they have done. And a lot of this don't actually get released to the public. But what I'm interested to find out is what kind of social media these individuals were following. Because I can say mental health has something to do with the physical part, or could have something to do with the drug or medicine they take. But also, we never look at the side of where these individuals are listening, who they are following on social media, who's really inspiring them. So you said earlier that, once you actually join one group or once you like something, they're going to just suggest more and more and more of that. Right. The question is, who are they listening to?
And, and like you were just saying, 25 years ago, if you were having dark or evil thoughts, you'd be hard pressed to find someone that thought the same way, because you
don't know how to find them. Yeah.
But with the internet and with social,
you can connect,
media and everything, you can choose to surround yourself with other like-minded individuals that think the same way that you do. And that can be dangerous because they can reinforce what you're thinking. What do you think, Bethany?
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I mean, I think that's so true. Yeah, I don't really know. But I think you can see that.
Yeah. I mean, I think let's say if you have a patient that come to you who is at a young age, and I was listening to Tim Kennedy on Joe Rogan's show, and I was listening about that majority of young people are not truly qualified physically to join the military. Like the majority of young generation is either out of shape, either can't run because of this social media gaming world, whatever that has taken over this generation. If you have someone that is young that came to you as a patient that's having issues, as a mental health specialist, what would be your steps to actually help someone out that is actually going through depression or going through something? And I could say someone at a young age, what would be the steps to really get this person back to where they need to be?
That's a really good question. It's different for everybody too. I come from a psychodynamic psychotherapy background, so I tend to focus first on kind of the first 6 years of life, right? Their attachment styles to primary caregivers, what types of traumas they experienced growing up, how they receive love, how they felt safe, right? Like, I believe that that's the starting point, right? That shape
probably
who we are, who we become as adults, right? What was that?
That's incredible. You said the first 6 years, and I've heard that so many times. Like, it's incredible how the first 6 years of our life can really affect us for the rest of our lives. Like you see, 45-year-old men that still have trauma from their childhood about how their father treated them or their mother treated them.
Yeah. And I think, not to get off on a tangent, but I think that that's so important for me too. And the work that I do is like communicating to the parents how important it is, just like, I think this is going to get better when our society becomes more educated on how to, just how to communicate with one another, emotional intelligence, and unfortunately, because of the stigma, because of the stigma in like the older generations, I think like it's not happening as fast as it could, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So going back to your patients, as Hamody mentioned, what type of patients do you primarily see? Are they mostly veterans, or is it civilians? What type of mix are you looking at?
So my practice right now is located right next to a high school. So I do see a lot of adolescents and teens. My niche, or what I focus a lot of my studies on in school or in grad school, was what I considered high risk career fields. So first responders, military, professionals. I do like to do a lot of trauma work. And so that is my ideal population. But right now I see mostly adolescents.
By trauma work, do you mean like people that have experienced trauma firsthand, or?
Yes.
What do you mean? Or just witnessed trauma?
Yeah. There's different types of trauma. I can work with somebody who's experiencing secondary trauma, say who do you call the 911 people? Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. Like a dispatcher.
Dispatcher. Thank you. So I work with some dispatchers. They don't necessarily see the trauma, right? But they're experiencing it in a secondary way, but also, people who experience trauma. I've recently been trained in EMDR, which has become one of the leading interventions for PTSD. And so you can use EMDR on any, childhood trauma and anxiety, depression, things like that. But like I said, what I would like to focus it is military and first responders
and you said this actually really kind of touched me when you said earlier the first 6 years. That actually brought me back to something. Like first 6 years. I mean, I just remembered just by her saying it. First 6 years of my life were probably one of the most violent years of my life. I was running away from the Republican Guard in 1991.
Yeah, so you were, for the audience that doesn't know, you were born and raised in Iraq.
I was born and raised in Iraq. I was running away from the Republican Guard. I was attacked by one of the strongest military machines in the Middle East back then. And it's kind of interesting because
what year was this? What year were you born?
I was born like in the 80s. And just remember in the first 6 years, like I was going through the 90s, the first Gulf War, and I just kind of relate. I'm like, you know what? I feel that my childhood has something to do with how my life turned up. Like I always wonder, right? Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of people see like how I rose up at 17, right? How I went to the war and how I made decisions in my life. But I do feel in my heart that all that was actually determined by how I actually was brought up. I mean,
so you were basically born in a war zone.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing. When I see that war zone and going to prison at age 12. So I'm talking about like 6-year-old, what I went through as 6 years old, and then what I went through 6 years later as a 12-year-old. So I feel like truly mentally, I feel these two events were very traumatic in my life, and it made me the way I was. And I feel like when she brought that up, I'm like, actually, you know what? I never thought of it this way.
Yeah.
I never thought of how the first 6 years of my life actually determined the human being that I became.
Yeah. And fortunately for all of us here, you chose the good path. You could have chosen to join Al-Qaeda or something like that.
Yeah.
But you chose to be a net positive contributor to your environment and to the world. Yeah. Right.
But if you think about it, I was also using violence.
You were using violence for good, though.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you think about it, the truth is I was also using violence.
Yeah.
I wasn't, like when I was fighting in Iraq and at the age of 17 years old, and the way I felt about my enemies, truly, I wasn't healthy. I don't think I was mentally healthy. I mean, I say that clearly.
Yeah.
That I don't think I was mentally healthy. I felt that I was actually, because of the traumas I've been, that's who I became.
Some might say you're still not mentally healthy.
I mean, I'm still not there. But however, I do feel that actually that those 6 years really, like, it's great that Bethany brought this up today, and I never thought about it this way. Truly. I was like, damn, you know what? The first 6 years of my life, I saw death. And what did I see all after that, all these years?
Yeah.
All I saw was death.
The same.
But truly, I think, that first 6 years was a huge change of my life. And I think it matters how you were brought up. Would you say, Bethany, the first 6 years that matters, or how you brought up in general as a child that could actually determine to who you really are? Because I feel like sometimes, I mean, I kind of compared to some of these shooters that actually did these shootings in the United States. And I see some of them had a healthy environment, had maybe one parent. And I see some of them had no dad. I see some of them did not have anybody that watched over them. I see that some that their parents took the wrong pathways with them. They did things that they were not supposed to do with them. In general, do you feel that how you brought up as a child is actually determine the human being that you become?
I do. And I also think that if that child experiences trauma, and it may not be the primary caregiver's that they're experiencing the trauma with, does that make sense? Like that can profoundly impact somebody and their future. So they could grow up in a, with a mom and dad who were great, who did exactly what they were supposed to do. And there are still some things that can have an impact and kind of derail somebody.
Mm-hmm. I truly believe, Bethany, that life is about 10% what happens to you and about 90% how you respond to it.
Yeah.
Would you agree that there's two types of victims? Like there's people that were abused or something like that as a child, and they said, no, this stops with me, and they decide to change everything for their offspring. Or there's people that continue that abuse into the next generation. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. And I think the more difficult route, right, is to be the one that breaks that cycle, So I think that it's just a really difficult thing to recognize. And then when you're surrounded with it, if you're surrounded in that environment, then it's just going to be that much harder.
Do you have any advice for someone that has experienced some childhood trauma and is definitely trying to change that cycle?
I feel like this advice should come out really, really easily, but I guess I would just encourage them to, I don't know. That's a hard question. I don't know why it's a hard question. I would encourage them to reach out to people who they know to be good, right? I talked about purpose kind of more in the beginning, but it's like, who do you want to be? And finding those role models, right? Because you can find those role models on social media and with the devices that we have in our hands, like they're more capable of doing that than they were before. So find the people you want to be, look at their character, look at how they behave, look at what they stand for, and and strive to be that, and I guess it sounds,
which me and you, Mike, I
simpler.
talked about that earlier, right? Like we talked about how people present themselves, correct?
Yeah.
It's like I always notice that people who are on social media that are promoting the wrong message, I always felt they're always going to have an audience, right? I don't feel they have a lot of audience. I feel because they have some of these negative followers or some of these negative, and as you said earlier, they all associate themselves with one another. When it comes to PSYOP, they're all going to come over and follow one another, and they're all sharing the same thing. Just because someone on social media is agreeing with you doesn't mean that you're right. Mm-hmm. And I feel that, as I said before, I used to be all against about, I'm all about freedom of speech. I'm all about things like, that people need to do whatever they want. But then when you see someone that's actually influencing the wrong way, someone is giving the wrong message, someone is actually playing with your emotions to get you more angry and telling you that the world that you're living in is extremely bad, extremely terrible.
Right.
And you are just kind of charging up at home. I mean, how many times have me and you have seen people that actually living at home and found themselves hating people so bad that haven't even met these people?
Yeah. Right.
It's just all manipulation of some sort. So that's where I stand. I was like, you know what? Sometimes I don't blame the social media or I don't blame these apps to ban certain people. I'm not saying that I support them doing it to everybody. I don't want to see that as a political assassination towards anybody, that it needs to shut everybody down. But I do believe it's important that the government release information into who these individuals were inspired for. Mm-hmm. That is a question that we never get the answers for. And we talked about that in a previous shows, me and one of the experts that specialize in school shootings.
Yeah.
I brought him Jason Bicklow. He was a former, he's now a Homeland Security agent. He was a former Border Patrol officer, and he brought some of these good things. It's just that we never get the answer. We hear the disasters, we know they go down, but we never really get the answer who these individuals were inspired for.
Yeah.
To this day, not one shooter in the United States, we were able to know what data they were utilizing, who they were following, who is inspiring them in the daily basis, who is live chat they're listening to. And that is, I think, extremely important when it comes to PSYOP, is that we do have, and me and you talked about that privately a couple of days ago. We talked about individuals that are spreading bad behavior. And we know some of these people might have personal things into it. Like I have seen people who have personal issues, and they're taking their personal issues and they're spreading it out in social media.
Yeah, misery loves company, right?
Misery loves company. And then there are other people who have other issues are finding a common ground. So this is where I believe is an unhealthy environment.
Right.
And I feel that needs to be limited and controlled, because I'm all about information as long as the information is real, accurate, and healthy.
True.
But if the information is not healthy, that is a direct threat to your, I mean, why are these kids going through depressions? Why are these kids going through what they're going through? But something interested me and you talked about a couple of days ago was the health, right? Physical health. Before we even start working on the brain, don't we have to worry about the body? I think the body is a huge factor to mental health.
I do want to talk about physical health.
Yeah.
But real quick before, I wanted to get Bethany's opinion on something I heard on Joe Rogan today.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the guy he was interviewing, but it's the author of The Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah.
It's a very popular book, New York Times bestseller. I think 1.5 million copies sold. Great book. But he was saying, in regards to all of these things that we're talking about today, he was saying that childhood trauma is very similar to hazing.
Really?
We're all veterans here. We've all been through hazing to some extent or another, right? And hazing works in the way that even though you hated it when you were being hazed, when it comes to you hazing the next new guy, you're like, well, I've been through that, so I'm going to put him through that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's very similar. Instead of breaking that cycle and saying, no, nobody should have to do that, you pass it on to the next one. I believe that that's very similar to how this generational mental health issues with abuse and everything else.
Yeah.
Would you agree, Bethany?
I think that's a really, really interesting idea. And yes, I think that we all want to feel like we belong, right? Or that we're understood. So, for example, like I hear a loud noise or the building shakes, right? I'm going to look to my left, to my right, and see if the people around me are on the same page. If that's one of our first instincts to do. And so we don't want to be alone. So I think it's super interesting, when it comes to the hazing, that is for us military people. I mean, that's camaraderie. It's like we went through it together and we got through it together and we're a team. That is what I got from that. I think the same thing can be said for like what we were just talking about, like social media. And it's like, if this person feels alone and they're confused in their values and they don't have a good example, right? Isn't that the perfect target for an extremist group to get a hold of and to recruit or whatever, to insulate them right into that community? And that's where, I think it can get dangerous. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe Hamody knows a lot more about this than I do, but wouldn't you agree that these type of terrorists like ISIS, they specifically seek out these type of isolated individuals to recruit?
Honestly, it's a big statement to say, but I do believe that the influencing part of things is extremely similar to the ISIS recruiting process. Because when you think about ISIS and all these radical groups, specifically ISIS, because ISIS had completely psychologically different experiment how to recruit people. They had more success recruiting people in the Western world, people from every country in Europe, every country in the world. But when you come to that, is ISIS figured out a psychological code and they were able to recruit as many people. What I see today is that terrorist organizations like ISIS actually have similar ways of recruiting people, just like how some of these radical groups online that are breaching every single day, and you have no idea who's listening to them, and you don't know the mental status of a person that is listening to them.
Right.
And that's really what makes a difference, is that you don't know what is the mental status of the listener on social media who's listening to these negative voices that are promoting violence indirectly. Mm-hmm. Like, not saying that some of these influencers are going to go out there telling their audience, hey, you need to go kill these people. They might slowly cook you up, get you to get angry to a certain level that you're almost going to feel that you want to kill the other side. Mm. And that's the psychological game right there. That's where a psyop expert can see things. It's a slow cook. It's not a fast thing. It's not a direct order. Okay. And that's actually where the federal government is having an issue, is how could they press charges on people that are causing this? The question is, if you go see a shooter and you find the people he was inspired by, how do you go to that person when they tell you, I don't know this follower, but you've been preaching to him all this time. You've been cooking him slowly. So that's the same exact thing. The way ISIS found its audience in Europe, there was a lot of problems in Europe. The way ISIS found recruits in Europe, there was a lot of issues in Europe that psychologically caused traumas to the individuals that lived there. Like an example, ISIS recruited over 2,000 fighters from the country of Belgium.
Wow.
Why? Why Belgium? Why France was only able to have 1,100 ISIS fighters came out of France, but why Belgium went to 2,000? You always have to look into these data into why ISIS has success in some of these European countries that no one even knew about. All I know in Belgium for back in the day is dogs. I don't know about anything what Belgium was. But once I saw there was like 2,000 fighters came out of Belgium and 800 of them came out of from the same town, that is crazy.
Wow.
That's like, oh, you got to stop. You got to look into what's the data are. And then what ISIS found out is that Belgium was going hard on immigrants. Some of these kids were born in Belgium to actually a Belgian mother, but the dad was in Belgium, so they were not granted a citizenship.
Oh, wow.
They didn't have a job. So they couldn't get a job.
Isolated and
they were isolated from society. Yeah. So what happened was, this is what made ISIS life a lot easier. Believe it or not, the violent damage that ISIS caused in the Middle East and Syria and Iraq was not done by Arabs or native of that land. It was done by the Europeans that came from Europe.
That's incredible.
But do you know why? Because they were extremely angry. Mm-hmm. Their mental status was extremely down.
So they were preying on people that were already angry.
Yeah. So when you think about it, what's the similarity between negative people on social media that are actually spreading this negative hate, right? Mm-hmm. And you know how the game works. Politics, man. People involved in politics, and sometimes we all can be involved in politics in a certain way, but that sometimes you find yourself, and I can guarantee you, within yourself, you'll find yourself in the wrong path. Mm-hmm. That when you get involved in politics, you're going to push forward and push forward and push forward. But when you look to your left and right, you're going to find someone right next to you and be like, really? Do I agree at the same points as this guy does?
Yeah.
Because this guy really needs help. But that's where it's hard in the United States that we are not fixing these problems.
And I say, like, I would say in general, be wary of anybody, whether it's a politician or somebody evil like ISIS or anything like that. Be wary of anybody that's trying to create division by labeling you, because that's the first way they get you, is they make you feel like everybody else is against you. When if we're left to our own devices, even though you and I are born in different countries, we have a lot more in common than we have that we're apart. But if we're left to our own devices, we realize, hey, we're both human. We have a lot of the same interests. But a politician or somebody like that has an agenda, they're going to seek to divide us. Right? Because that's how they get their power.
And that's the thing, is that you need to come back to the drawing board. And what are the difference between how ISIS recruited fighters and how are young people getting influenced by the wrong people? And Negative voices is what we need to fight within the United States. Believe it or not, when this happened in the last recent fight between ISIS and what's happening in the Middle East, all these European countries went back to the drawing board, figured out what the problems are, and they fixed it. If they didn't grant someone citizenship in Belgium, now they do. If these people were not able to have a job as a police officer, now they open the doors. And you know where they learned that from? Where they picked all these data, where they find all these solutions. It wasn't in the Middle East. It was here in America.
Oh.
Because guess what? You had so many fighters came out of Europe to fight in the Middle East. How many of these fighters were Americans?
No idea.
Maybe one or two.
Oh.
So why do you have two people came out of the United States to fight with ISIS and maybe a third one that got arrested in the airport actually by the FBI before he even left to go there? So why you're having 3 people came in the United States, why do you have 2,000 and 1,100 person came out of France, Belgium and France? So you got to look at the data. You got to look into all these numbers, and they do make sense. That they learned this from us is because they learned that here in America, no one discriminated against Muslims like the way they do in Europe. Mm-hmm. Here in America, if you're a Muslim American, no one does anything, right? They don't care if you are a Muslim American. You can go with the society, you can have a green card, you can drive, you can do whatever you want. You can apply to be a police officer if you are a Muslim American. If your parent was not born in the United States, you can still get a job. That's where Europe had made a mistake. And I can guarantee you now Europe will never make that mistake again. You know why? Because they didn't want these fighters fighting them in their own homeland. And that is the nightmare that every European country is afraid of. And I'll give you one thing. There's a guy goes by the name Jake Bellotti. Australian kid, only 16-year-old. He was bullied in school, had a lot of anger against the people of Australia, hated his hometown. He blew himself up on a checkpoint in Ramadi, Iraq.
Wow.
But the one thing you have to look into is his last question before he died. This is where he told the ISIS leader who sent him to blow himself up. My plan was to go and blow myself up in Australia. They said, well, we don't need you to do that right now. We need you to do that in Iraq. But what his plan, what his thinking was, he wanted to cause that damage in Australia. Wow. So this is what Europe is afraid of. This is what Australia is afraid of. And this is why they went back to the drawing board to how to avoid this issue. The question is, are we going back to the drawing board here in the United States to avoid the serious problems?
So you bring an interesting point that I wanted to ask Bethany about, because with mental health, it is protected, right? There's confidentiality between a medical provider and their patient. Bethany, is there any commonality that you draw from your patients that you're actually allowed to report on? Say that you treat 10 different youth that are troubled, and you recognize that there's a commonality between them. Are you allowed to report any type of statistics, or is that all protected?
I am like a mandatory reporter, but I don't think that's what you're going for. I mean, I'm not in a position to do like research and to record numbers in any specific way. That is not something that I would be totally interested in doing that, but you have to have the kind of the right platform position to do that.
So you're saying, like, in these mental health studies, these are patients that have given consent to have their I think their statistics or whatever you want to call it reported.
I would imagine so.
So in your treatment, you're just focused on getting the patient in a healthy place. You're not actually reporting any kind of statistics like, hey, I noticed that these 10 patients have this.
Right.
One
I'm not
thing
doing
in common.
any research right now.
Okay. I think that, I mean, I know that we do have medical professionals that are strictly based on statistics and studies like that. Yeah. But I wonder if maybe we should look into, without violating patient confidentiality, right? Yeah. What's the term I'm looking for? The protection of your medical records.
HIPAA?
Yeah, the HEPA violations. Without violating any of that, I wonder if we could make it easier to share commonalities that these medical professionals are seeing.
Yeah, it's going to be hard because with the legal aspects of it. And I don't know. I just feel that, I feel that we need to do something to actually encourage the younger generation towards a better health. I do feel that the physical health is an extremely important topic. And I do feel that, me and you both have our own physical health issues, right? I had medical issues. You had, you went through a big, crazy weight loss story, which is amazing. Like I felt when I was not healthy, I felt my mental status was terrible. Mm-hmm. It was extremely terrible.
I do believe that there is a direct correlation between physical health and mental health. And I'd be interested to hear if Bethany feels the same way. Have you seen that in your patients?
I don't know that I can say I see that particularly in my clients, but I would say overall, yes, I 100% agree with that. I do have so my daughter is a cancer patient and she has chronic health issues and it, you're dealing with pain, chronic pain or health problems, or you're not feeling good. It's like, that's going to have an effect on your mental health. So yes, I would say 100% I agree with that.
Yeah. And you mentioned it earlier when you're bringing in a new patient, you do talk about their nutrition and their lifestyle and their fitness, to get an idea of their overall mental picture. I believe that there is a direct correlation to physical health with your mental health. I went through a journey about 5 years ago where I lost 70 pounds. I was a 35-year-old that was 250 pounds and I had a big wake up call. But in this time of transformation, I lost 70 pounds in 18 months. I saw a major change just in everything that I've done, basically. During that time since then, I've been promoted in my job 3 different times. I do not think that's a coincidence. I think it has a lot to do with when you focus on physical health, that also you focus on mental health as well.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe it because I just wanted to talk about my experience. That I feel that when I was going through a lot of physical health problems, my mental health was not out there. Mm-hmm. So I do believe that physical health may be needed to be promoted first to people, and I think that kids are not doing enough things nowadays. They're not doing enough sports. They're not getting educated in fitness. Food out there is extremely not healthy in the United States. Mm-hmm. I mean, I talk about the most unhealthy food I've ever seen in my life, that someone being from the outside of the United States who's been around, food is extreme. Like the culture of food in the United States is extremely not healthy. I look at the way people eat. Oh yeah. I look at some of the stuff that's being made, and you feel like it's almost like you feel like when you eat certain things that you are not worried about what's in it or what's going to do to your body, what's going to do to you or to your health in general. So I feel that there's a lot of like avoidance. There's a lot of things avoiding. There's a lot of avoiding to issues. And if you don't care about your physical health, then clearly you don't care about your mental health. And that's how I feel.
I agree. And even it could be something that you're not even thinking about. Like I saw an article today by newsmedical.net. 20% of your daily calorie intake is used by your brain, right? And they also stated that with a high sugar intake, this can result in increased anxiety, increased hunger, meaning you're going to eat more, and irritability. And it also increases inflammation and oxidative stress. So if you think about like the amount of sugar that Americans eat on a daily basis, because the major food manufacturers, they're in the business of making money too, right? So they throw a bunch of sugar in something, it tastes great, you're going to keep eating this thing, right?
Stuff,
but if you think about 20% of everything you eat is fueling your brain.
It is. You're right.
you can't say that doesn't attribute to mental health.
And they say like sugar is like cocaine. What it does to the brain.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
Bethany?
incredible. I think what Hamody just said was really good. And that's like, if they're not caring about their physical health, they're obviously not caring about their mental health, and I think that that's so true. When I see my clients, I really do try and approach it in a holistic way, like you have to have, and this sounds so much like a therapist, but it's like you have to have self-love, compassion, self-respect, right? All of those things to put the efforts in to care for your physical body. So I don't know if I don't know which comes first. You keep saying that physical, if we take care of our physical body, it will help our mental health. But I think it's vice versa. It's just so interconnected, like you have to have the self-worth, the value yourself enough, right? And that comes from up here to have the motivation to take care of your physical body and do what you need to do there. So it's just so interconnected.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I love the feeling of endorphins. I think that really just I think that's the best therapy out there. It's like after, me and you both work out, do a similar thing and doing CrossFit or doing something. And what I like about some of these HIIT workouts is that in the end of it, once you reach your endorphins, there's like a good feeling about it.
Oh yeah.
It's like after each workout, you feel great going home, don't you?
Yeah.
You feel amazing, right? You feel good.
Yeah.
It's almost like you release something after you work out.
And it's awesome that you mentioned that because I was reading an article at CrossFit.com. Yeah. And as you know, CrossFit has direct correlation, direct ties to Navy SEAL training.
Yeah.
Right. The Navy SEALs actually tested CrossFit during its infant stages.
Yeah.
Right. And they're talking about the high number of veterans that are very attracted to CrossFit style workouts. And the reason for that is because, especially after they get out of the service, they're looking for something to replace that camaraderie with, right? So if you go to CrossFit, you're going to get that same sense of camaraderie, right? Because you're all like doing the same workout at the same time. So you're having a shared experience, right? And on a very small level, experiencing a very difficult workout with someone else kind of creates a bond.
And
similar to a bond that you would have when you would survive something traumatic together.
True.
Right?
You're right.
And even in the article, it mentioned that there's a very high number of veterans that do CrossFit style workouts that say that they used CrossFit to pull themselves out of a very dark place.
And I agree with that. Like actually, when I went to the TBI treatment up in Texas, the doctor was actually prescribing to veterans to go join a CrossFit and do level 1 because most of them were really mentally and physically not out there. I mean, I think I was one of the few that came in there. Beside the active duty guy was Jason Belford, the Ranger guy that came through that were actually already working out, but they were actually advised that to go do specifically CrossFit because they needed them to do that. They needed them to reach that level. And told them, look, we know this is hard. We know this is a HIIT workout. Just start at level 1 and see what you can get. Yeah. And I do believe it's a huge. I believe before I work out, I'm in a different mental status. I don't think the same. I can get stressed out. I can get stuck somewhere. Some of this brain fogging thing that I can run to. And I do believe when I'm working out, when I finish my working out, I can think better.
Absolutely.
I can think better. I can be a better person. Yeah. I can be a little bit more calm. So I think, honestly, that's the only reason I keep going back to this kind of style of working out because I do believe it's contributing positively to the brain.
No, I do believe that any physical fitness, and Bethany, you can pipe in if you agree or disagree. I think any physical fitness is going to be healthy for you.
Yeah.
But you and I are both CrossFitters, so we may be a little bit biased.
Yeah.
But I believe that the differentiator is if you're going to like a global gym, like a Gold's Gym or Planet Fitness, anything like that, you usually have ear pods in. You're the only one doing the workout you're doing, so you're isolated. there's other people working out around you, but you're the only one doing that workout. And you're listening to your own music. You're pretty isolated. You can't hear what other people are saying. Whereas with a class style workout like CrossFit does, you're all listening to the same music because you're not wearing earbuds. You're all experiencing the same exact workout, whether you're doing the easy version or the harder version. Yeah. Right. And it does instill a sense of camaraderie and community.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think that belonging, you feel like you belong somewhere and you feel that you're doing something with a group of individuals. Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge for veterans. I do believe veterans needs to do that. I know that a lot of veterans are doing their own workout, which is great. But if you're not doing anything, that what you should be doing is you should go and sweat it out with a bunch of people. I know it sounds disgusting, but truly it's the best thing mentally for you to do, because I did feel great from it. Yeah. I feel like my mental status before starting doing this, I was like, whew, I was going through a hard time.
Absolutely. And Bethany, do you have any experience with this type of group fitness and how it affects your mental health?
I don't. I mean, I have done some CrossFit, but I do a lot of the group exercises in the gym, like the mom classes now. But yeah, no, I think what you guys are saying really ties back into what we were talking about, that sense of community, that sense of belonging, small obtainable goals, right? All of these things that we've kind of talked about here and there throughout. It's just so important. Yes, like the endorphins and the physical exertion and just how good you feel after that. It's just, I mean, like you said, it's really beneficial.
Yeah, because from an ego standpoint, like we all want, I'm a self-made man. I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps, right? But in the real end of things, like when you really want to swallow your pride, is you realize that very rarely is somebody a self-made person. And the shared experience is so important, I think, to human health. And as an example to that, if anybody's ever traveled alone, I do a traveling job myself. And when you see something or you try a new food for the first time, you see something amazing, the first response that you have that runs through your mind is, I need to share this with somebody. So that in itself speaks to that maybe we are not as self-made as we think we are, because our first initial desire when we encounter something new is to share it with another human, right? So if we embrace that, I think we're all better together than we are separate. And I don't think isolation is the answer. I think if you're in a dark place mentally, you do need to find a community, even whether it's fitness or any other type of community, to help support you.
And it's as long as positive community. And I think you're right. I mean, if people actually start putting their efforts towards themselves, towards working on themselves, towards improving themselves, we'll be a lot better. I can guarantee you that all these individuals who have been listening to these negative voices on social media, when one of these negative voices go live for an hour, if you put that hour towards your health, you'll be a lot better mentally than you are. And right now, and that's what I feel. I feel that there is a lot of directions. People are spending time on things that are not contributing anything to their own benefits. Is they're contributing to their negative energy. And I think that's important. And I do believe that kids who are listening to other negative voices on social media, or somebody's going live, or these kids need to be doing sports. These kids need to be doing something physical. They need to go hit the gym. They need to go do something positive that is going to contribute to their mental health, not something negative, because that's how it turns my day. And I have a personal friend that I know that has been in this circle of actually negative energy. Like I think the political aspects of things, right? Like I'm okay about being passionate about politics and everything. It's all right. But it gets to a certain point where it's not healthy. And I believe like this person that I was talking about was contributing a lot of its hours every single day towards politics versus its own business. Yeah. And you can see the person business started to fall down. Yeah. Because the person is actually spending more time into the politics. At the end of the day, that politics did not give him anything healthy, did not give him any money.
And, you know, I think you would probably agree with this, that I've done a lot of things that I regret in my life.
Yeah.
But I have never regretted a single workout.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no regrets going in there. And it's true. You never regret, right? I mean, I must stress it out. I might do it, but I never regret. But I do feel like it's important to manage your day. It's important that mentally you need to work on it. You need to work on yourself to get a good mental status. If you're not working on your mental health, you are not going to be there mentally.
And I know that we keep saying CrossFit, but one thing that I really appreciate about the CrossFit community is we're not just focused on physical well-being as far as just making yourself look good. We're focused on nutrition, which is very, very, very important.
It's a lifestyle.
And we're also in mental health as far as I just started about 6 weeks ago doing gratitude journaling.
Yeah.
And the idea with gratitude journaling is the first thing you do as soon as you wake up, before you do anything else, you have to write down something you're thankful for.
Yeah.
And it really sets the tone for your day. I've realized that like sometimes you can wake up grumpy and be like all in this negative cycle and everything's against you. But if you start your day out just thinking about something that you're grateful for, it really sets the tone for the day. Yeah. And I know so many of the top CrossFit coaches recommend this, which is why I picked it up. And it's so rewarding.
It's like I feel personally, and Bethany, you can tell me what you think of this. I feel like personally, every human being needs a mentor. Mm-hmm. They need to wake up and they need a good, positive mentor that's going to contribute to their life. There's a lot of people that I really look up to. And when I listen to them for no longer than 5 minutes, I have learned something. Mm-hmm. I have found potential within myself. And I feel that people need to have a positive mentor. They need to look, as Bethany mentioned earlier, is that you need to have a positive mentor versus we all see it. Who looks like a negative. And this is a little story. This is a friend of mine. Follows a lot of people. And one of these individuals I actually served with overseas. And I know this person pretty well. And I find the friend that I have is actually resonating on following that other person. It's a weird connection. They never met each other. But because this personal friend of mine, the first one, was into this movement, he found himself actually following my other friend who I already know at served with in Iraq. I know personally of this person. And he's like, oh, I love what this guy's offering. I'm like, did you know this guy actually does not have and that is the thing. It was funny for me because I saw that you don't know who you're following. You don't know who you're listening to. And I said, oh my God, this person is not giving you any benefit. This person is angry because he's high. And that's why. But you find that to be extremely important. Mm-hmm. And you think it is, but it's not. This person was on drugs, on serious drugs.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it goes back to, well, when people say, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are.
Yeah. And that's a great one by Jason Belfort. Yeah. I mean, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Yeah. It's very simple. Yeah. And that's why I feel like it's in all environments, all who you surround yourself with. And that determines psychologically to who you really are and what you can do. I think we have a great one today on mental health.
Yeah.
It's always like, I think mental health and physical health, it's always fascinates me, right? It's always because it determined to everything. It can determine to it's connected to terrorism. It's connected to violence. It's connected to everything. I think in the end of it, it's all mental health.
Yeah. Bethany, somebody that you're talking to for the first time that's going through a really hard time mentally is in a dark place. What's the first things that you recommend to them?
So like I said before, I mean, I do recommend like those very basic things. The eating, sleeping, exercising, making sure that we're balanced in all of that. I will always recommend a therapist. I mean, I think there's a lot of confusion today about what therapy is. There really is no, I don't believe that there's really a what's the word I'm like, I'm sorry, a replacement for a therapist, somebody who has dedicated their life, dedicated their, their energy, they're passionate about human behavior, learning it, studying it. And like, they can help there are interventions that work. I think what we've hit on a couple times during this is like that sense of belonging, that community. We are social creatures. It's so important to us. So to have somebody to go and talk to about what they're experiencing, like that's so huge. I think maybe the last thing, and it's like, I hate to sound cliche, but it's just like, just really taking the time to understand who you are, where you came from, why you are the way that you are, so that you can have compassion for yourself. Like, I just think that when someone can have compassion for themselves, understand themselves, then they can give that to other people throughout the day, and that's really like why I became a therapist. I feel like that makes a difference. Every single person, if I can show them their value, if I can show them their worth, that they can spread that to others,
Yeah, I love that. I do believe, on a positive note, I do believe that we're starting to turn the corner. My parents' generation, there was a real stigma against mental health, especially therapists, and they called them shrinks, right? And I believe that we're coming around a corner to where it's becoming
taking it seriously.
It's okay to talk about being under the care of a therapist, right? And some of the best people in our society have therapists, right? Yeah. So I think we're turning a corner with that. I did want to ask you though, say that we have a friend, somebody has a friend that they see that they're going through a dark time. What's the best thing to do about that friend? Is it to call somebody and say this, I think this person is dangerous? Or is it to say, hey, I think that you should get help? Like what should we do if we see one of our friends going through a dark time?
I think there's so much fear around maybe pointing that out in somebody or exposing them and their difficult time, right? But if we're all going through it, then we don't have to be so worried about that. I think, you have to ask yourself, it's like, you could save somebody's life, if they're really going through a hard time and they don't have anybody, like, don't be afraid to encourage them to get help. And it's out there for them. I think that's, this is kind of getting down a whole other thing, but like, it is out there. You don't have to have insurance. There are community action agencies all over that have therapists and interns that are working at a lower rate or for nothing at all, so there are a lot of programs for people to get assistance, and you don't have to have insurance. You don't have to pay so much out of pocket, but
there was news recently, and I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe you can tell us. There was news recently about a new hotline that they might be launching, similar to 911, but specifically for mental health issues.
Yeah, so I heard that.
Yeah, there are a ton of hotlines out there for if somebody's going through a hard time and they're suicidal or anything like that. And you can just Google it. Really, I have it.
But I believe they were trying to come up with a new national code, like similar to 911, where you would call specifically for mental health. Was it 988 or something like that?
Yeah, it's like a veteran suicide kind of thing.
Yeah, but no, this was specifically for any type of mental crisis.
And I think it's a great idea. I believe it's a phenomenal idea. They need to have that.
And then that would kind of go to like a dispatcher that could connect you with the specific type of help that you need.
Yeah.
Whether it's suicide or
exactly.
It's someone that you think is a danger or something like that.
What if someone has nobody to lean on?
I think, and Bethany, you can tell me, I think that if you do have a friend or a loved one that's going through a very dark time, I think the most important thing you can do is just show them that they're cared for.
Yeah.
Like that you care about them.
Exactly. Support.
Yeah. Just being that, and being that you're, I feel like a broken record, but it is just that not feeling alone, right? Feeling like somebody's there with you. They're, that you're not isolated. And, yeah, I think that's hugely important. I would just encourage them to get the help that they need, and not be afraid to contact 911 if there is a true emergency, if you feel like they're in a danger of hurting themselves or somebody else.
Absolutely.
I think the other day we had a great segment on mental health.
Absolutely.
And it's a topic that I would love to always go back to, because I feel it's important. I can learn something from it myself. And I believe that a lot of people need to learn something from mental health. I think it's one of the biggest threats beside terrorism out there that the United States is facing right now. Mm-hmm. And we need to take it seriously. We protect ourselves from certain things, and we need to take the same measures we take in counterterrorism towards mental health. Mm-hmm. In the end, this is our future. These young people are our future. They're everything. They are the future of this country. And if we're not protecting them, helping them reach a better health status, we're not going to be able to have a safe country that we live in. So I believe mental health is one of the most important topics that I talk about. Again, thank you everybody for being with us in the Black Side Show on episode 10. Until we see you guys again.